violence. That is what they want. That is how dictators evolve, when good people of all different beliefs and backgrounds stay silent. No King's Day says we will not stay silent. Do not, I say to the American people, do not be afraid to exercise your right to free speech. Be proud that you're doing it. Do not be afraid to peacefully protest against Donald Trump's eroding of our democracy, and do not be afraid to show how much you love this beautiful democracy, as the founding fathers called it, God's noble experiment. We have to keep this precious democracy. Now on the young Republicans, another sad chapter in how the Republican Party has devolved over the last few years. It's been 2 days since Politico published a horrifying story revealing thousands of private messages containing racist, sexist, and violent comments from prominent members of the Young Republicans organization. And yet, President Trump and the Republican leadership has remained silent. There's nothing but radio silence from Republican leaders who seem to claim they worry about combating political violent rhetoric. The silence from Republican leaders in the face of Hitler jokes and gas chamber jokes is deafening. Where are they? When they don't like somebody who says something on the left, they're the first to criticize them. Well, this is one of the nastiest, most vicious things that we have ever seen written by young Republicans, no less, and the Republican leadership, including President Trump, is silent. As I said, Republicans never miss a chance to preach about violent rhetoric when it comes from the other side, and of course that should be condemned. But now that it's coming from their own ranks, they're silent. Some Republicans seem to even excuse this vile behavior. This is amazing. The Vice President of the United States, no less, J.D. Vance, dismissed the messages as just a college group chat. Can you imagine if it was a group of people on the left saying some things, if he'd say the same thing? A college group chat? Does J.D. Vance really think glorifying Hitler and gas chambers is just a silly joke? Imagine if it came from the other side. We all know that Vance would be losing his mind right now. He'd be all over Fox News, decrying it. But now, since it's coming from his own ranks, he's just excusing it. Despicable, disgraceful, shameful. No matter if you're a Republican or Democrat in the middle, we all must condemn this nasty behavior and make it clear. This type of vicious rhetoric is unacceptable in America. And finally, on Gateway. On Gateway. Yesterday, President Trump and his administration terminated funding for Gateway. Gateway is the most important infrastructure project in America, period. It'll keep our economy moving, our region connecting, tens of thousands of union workers on the job. Donald Trump is trying to kill it again in pure spite and with sheer stupidity. It's petty revenge politics. And who gets hurt? It's going to screw over hundreds of thousands of New York and New Jersey commuters, choke off our economy, kill good-paying jobs. It affects New Jersey. More people use it to commute from New Jersey than from New York. What Trump has done on Gateway is vindictive, reckless, and foolish. And if Donald Trump thinks he can use New Yorkers, New Jerseyites, commuters, small businesses, union construction workers, and the first responders as political pawns, it will backfire on him spectacularly. We will fight the president on this in every way to preserve this crucial, vital infrastructure project, crucial and vital to New York, New Jersey, the Northeast economy, and the whole American economy. I yield the floor.
Unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum calls with respect to the following cloture motions. Calendar 168, H.R. 5371, Executive Calendar number 460.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today is day 16 of the Schumer shutdown. Democrats have an opportunity to end the charade today. We'll be voting in the next few moments. I expect they won't. Why? Well, for starters, the minority leader believes every day gets better for us. I'm not sure who the us is, but that's what he believes. He must be talking about Democrat leadership, Democrat politicians. Can't be talking about people all across the country, not the people who work every day to keep our country safe, not the federal workers who aren't getting paid. Oh no, he can't be talking about them when he refers to every day gets better for us. What Senator Schumer and Democrats in this body are really saying is this: every day of this Schumer shutdown strengthens their alliances with the far left activist groups. These radicals hold the reins on today's Democrat Party. They're driving the stagecoach. Schumer's not leading this. Jeffries isn't leading it. The people that are driving the stagecoach are the left-wing activists, and they are driving it over the cliff. Let me give you another reason why I suspect Democrats will once again refuse to reopen the government. It's because the far-left activist groups are pressuring the Democrats to keep the government closed until after their radical anti-America rally, which is going to be held this weekend. The rally, which some have labeled the I Hate America rally, is going to take place Saturday, and there'll be rallies in D.C. and across the country. We've just heard from the minority leader on the floor inviting people to attend these rallies, to participate, what I have referred to and others have as the I Hate America rally. He is a cheerleader for these far left activist groups and their causes. All these rallies are going to be led by the far left activists, and all will be calling on the Democrats to keep the government closed. And the Democrats in this body are beholden to every single one of these far left activist groups, groups like, quote, #ResistTrump and American Atheists. So here's a headline from Politico. Chuck Schumer's critics are satisfied for now. The article goes on to quote the head of the far-left activist group called Indivisible. This group is organizing Saturday's radical rally. The leader of the far-left group says of the minority leader, he said, quote, "He hasn't surrendered yet. I call that progress, and we're cheering him on now." Well, 7 months ago, that same person had a very different message for the minority leader. That same person said, quote, "Senator Schumer should step aside as leader. Every Democrat in the Senate should call for him to do so." So what changed? Well, Senator Schumer started towing the line of the far-left group. He shut down the government in spite of the fact that 13 times when Joe Biden was president, he voted for a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. Well, what changed? Well, the minority leader is now the puppet of the radical, extreme, dangerous, scary wing of his party. He's huddled with the far-left activist group for months before this shutdown. Months. They organized this shutout in Senator Schumer's office. They organized a war room for the shutdown. They're calling the tune. Senator Schumer even gloated to Punchbowl News, quote, "We thought about this long in advance. This isn't something that just happened. They've been planning this. This is premeditated. It's a political game for Senator Schumer and the Democrats, and it is a dangerous game for every other American. People aren't receiving paychecks because Senate Democrats want to prove their allegiance to the far left. Democrats want a standing ovation this Saturday when they rise to address the radical wing of their party, the wing that's holding the reins and holding them tightly, a wing that's extreme, dangerous, and scary, that is pro-crime and anti-America. That's what we're facing, Mr. President. Senate Democrats want to be cheered on for holding hostage the paychecks of the TSA agents and air traffic controllers. Meanwhile, Americans are sick and tired of Democrats' dangerous political games. They just want to get back to work. Today, Democrats are going to have an opportunity to prove that they aren't beholden to the far left of the party. We're going to have a vote. We're going to vote on a bipartisan appropriations bill as well to fund the Department of Defense, to fund the war fighters, the troops, the people who keep our nation and our allies safe. Now, Mr. President, this bill has already come through a bipartisan appropriations committee. The vote was 26-3. 26 voted for it, only 3 voted against it. That same bill we're bringing to the floor today. And we're going to see if the Democrats are going to work with us on the bipartisan appropriation bill. They claim they want regular order. They claim they want things to work together. And it's a bill that they have said themselves it's necessary. Now, remember, Senator Schumer last year didn't bring a single appropriations bill to this floor of the Senate, in spite of the fact that 12 bipartisan bills passed out of the committee. He refused to bring any of them to this floor to fund the government when he was majority leader. Wonder who he's going to side with today. Senate Republicans this year have already approved 3 appropriations bills to fund the government. This will be the 4th. Democrats are holding the government hostage. They're holding the American people hostage. Republicans are committed to reopen the government. We are going to vote against that today. We're holding votes on our bipartisan, clean, continuing resolution, one that Democrats have voted on 13 times in favor of when Joe Biden was in the White House. Now, I believe that Democrats have an opportunity as well as an obligation to end the Schumer shutdown. We should end it today. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Democrat Whip.
Mr. President, last week we learned that Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado had won this year's Nobel Peace Prize. This is a photograph of her. She did so for her steadfast and courageous fight for democracy in the once proud nation of Venezuela that unfortunately now, under a man named Maduro, has descended into chaos and dictatorship. I had the chance to visit Venezuela in 2018, just before the country's strongman Nicolas Maduro staged a sham election. The years that followed were a predictable disaster, bringing further suffering on the Venezuelan people. In late 2023, under severe repression, the Venezuelan opposition organized a primary election that selected Ms. Machado as its candidate for the July 2024 presidential election. Using a tired old playbook, the Maduro regime refused to allow her on the final ballot. Undeterred, her colleague Edmundo Gonzalez was able to run in her stead. Not surprisingly, given the country's near-failed state status, he won over Maduro with 2/3 of the vote in a process meticulously documented by domestic election observers. What did the Maduro regime do? It shamefully refused to swear him as a successor into office and forced him to flee the country. But Maria Corina Machado refused to leave. She stayed, while the regime arrested key opposition supporters and threatened her as well. And while she remains in hiding for her own safety, she has continued to fight for those election results to be respected and a return to democracy in Venezuela. That steadfast courage in the face of such cruelty is incredible and certainly worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. Senator Jeanne Shaheen and I were on the telephone yesterday with this brave young lady. She was as determined as ever to see a better future for the people of Venezuela. She has my continued admiration and support in that effort. On another topic, Mr. President, I want to say a few words about events in the Middle East and Ukraine. Over the long weekend, the world saw what is hopefully the beginning of the end of the war in Gaza. I want to congratulate President Trump for the historic agreement that made this possible. There are still critical elements to be negotiated and settled. But the first phase, which included the release of the Israeli hostages and the ceasefire, is a good faith start to a more inclusive agreement. It won't be easy. The remaining steps will be difficult and require sustained attention from President Trump and our allies that help make the beginning of this agreement a reality. As New York Times columnist Tom Friedman wisely wrote this week, and I quote him, "You don't have a second to rest. As someone who wants you to succeed, I have to remind you, as hard as the first state was, you've not seen the hardest yet." I agree. There's been so much pain and suffering sparked 2 years ago from Hamas's brutal October 7th attack and the ensuing war, and it'll take a long time, if ever, to heal. But this is the best chance in a long time toward a more hopeful future where both people, Palestinians and Israelis, can live in peace. Similarly, I hope President Trump will now focus momentum from these events and equal attention on seeking an end to the war in Ukraine. I've said before, I don't begrudge President Trump for trying to engage Russian President Putin to negotiate an end to this terrible conflict. But it should be clear to everyone, and I hope it's clear to President Trump, Putin isn't interested or serious. In fact, Putin has only increased his deadly attacks on Ukraine since such good faith outreach by the United States. Similarly, it's long overdue that the Senate pass bipartisan Russian sanctions, a bill that now has 80 bipartisan sponsors, a bill I'm happy to support. Putin only responds to force, military or economic, and it's time for the president and Congress to stand behind the people of Ukraine and to increase this pressure on President Putin. Mr. President, on a separate matter, I'd like to respond to the comments made by my colleague and friend, Senator Barrasso from Wyoming, on the floor this morning. Why is this government shut down? Why? What is the reason for it? The president's party is in control in the White House, in the House, and in the Senate, and yet we've stopped and the government shut down. Why? Because there's a fundamental issue we're trying to resolve for the good of the American people. And what is it? Well, let me give you an illustration. What if I told you, if you live in Illinois, that October 27th, your health insurance company is going to send you a notice at your home. It's going to announce what's going to happen to your health insurance premiums on your insurance on January the 1st of this coming year. It's also going to tell you, for many people, there's going to be a dramatic increase. Dramatic. 114%. Your premium is going to more than double. Some people will say, that's all right, got plenty of money in the bank, not worried about it a bit. But most people will say, doubled? It's already too high. What am I going to do? How am I going to afford this? What's it going to do to my family budget if I have to pay twice as much January 1st for my health insurance? How did this happen? Who did this? It's called the big, beautiful budget bill of President Trump. That's what did it. There's a tax credit that's available for millions of American families to help them pay for their health insurance premium. The Republicans eliminate it. And when they eliminate it, people are on their own to come up with the money for pay for the health insurance. Is it important? I think it's critical. It's one of the most basic questions you're going to ask when you ask, how's your family doing? Are you doing okay when it comes to health insurance? If you had an unexpected large medical bill, do you have insurance to cover it? Well, for thousands, maybe millions of Americans, the new health insurance plan is going to be too expensive for them to pay the premiums. So what do? Well, you look for a plan that has a lot of money out of pocket expenditures for the people who are covered. It's the skinny policy, only in catastrophes and calamities. And that, unfortunately, is all you have. And in the meantime, you're in a situation where your family tomorrow may face a medical bill which would break the bank. That's what it comes down to. That's what this shutdown is about. We believe the Republicans should help us in helping the families across America. As I said, October 27th is a day of reckoning in Illinois for people who are policyholders there. It's going to happen across the United States. It's a policy they created on the Republican side, and we should work with them to change it. The sooner, the better. I yield the floor.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a close? The ayes and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt. Thank you. Mr. Budd. Okay, thanks. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Marino. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Mr. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer. She did. Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Hyde-Smith, Kennedy, Moody, Marino, Sheehy, and Wicker. Senators voting in the negative: Baldwin, Bennett, Durbin, Gallego, Kim, Murray, Schatz, and Warnock. Yeah.
Mrs. Gillibrand. Mrs. Gillibrand. No. Mr. Cotton, aye. Mr. Crapo, aye. Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mr. Kelly, no. Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Husted, aye. Mr. Merkley, no. Ms. Smith, no. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Ms. Hassan, no. Mr. Schumer, no. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Mr. Padilla, no. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Mullen, aye. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Peters, no. Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Rish, aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Warner, no. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mr. Paul, no. Mr. Rounds, aye. Mr. Fetterman, aye. Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Reed, no. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Curtis, aye. Mr. Justice, aye. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Ms. Hirono, no. Mr. Kramer, aye. Mr. Heinrich, no. Miss Ernst, aye. Mr. Marshall, aye.
Johnny.
Ms. Markowski, aye. Mr. Markey, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mrs. Brett, aye. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Coons, no. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. McCormick, aye. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Mrs. Fisher, aye. Ms. Cortez Masto, Ms. Cortez Masto, aye.
But I mean, I just think if there's enough trouble brewing.
Mr. Haggerty, aye.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Schiff, no. Mr. Banks, aye. Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mr. Welch, no. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. King, aye. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Mr. Kane, no. Miss Rosen, no. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Moran, aye. Miss Slotkin, no. Miss Alsobrooks, no. Mr. Cruz, aye. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. Thune,
Majority Leader.
Mr. Thune, no.
No, no, nope. Don't do anything. We're gonna vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 51, the nays are 45. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President,
Majority
I
Leader.
I enter a motion to reconsider.
Motion is entered. The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is, Is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the nomination of Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama should be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Yep.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoban, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Merkley, Mrs. Moody, Mr. Moran, Mr. Marino, Mr. Mullen, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Banks, Barrasso, Blackburn, Bozeman, Britt, Budd, Collins, Cornyn, Cruz, Curtis, Durbin, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Hoven, Johnson, Justice, Kelly, Kennedy, King, Langford, Lummis, Marshall, McConnell, McCormick, Moran, Marino, Paul, Reed, Rounds, Schmidt, Scott of Florida, Sullivan, Thune, and Welch. Mr. Schatz, no. Mr. Wicker, aye. Ms. Rosen, no. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Mr. Kramer, aye. Ms. Hirono, no. Mrs. Hyde Smith, aye. Mr. Coons, aye. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Lee, aye. Ms. Slotkin, no. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Markey, no. Mr. Kim, no. Senators voting in the negative: also Brooks, Blumenthal, Blunt Rochester, Cantwell, Cortez Masto, Fetterman, Gallego, Heinrich, Hickenlooper, Hirono, Kim, Lujan, Markey, Merkley, Murphy, Padilla, Rosen, Sanders, Schatz, Slotkin, Smith, Van Hollen, Warner, and Wyden. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Haggerty, aye. Mr. Sheehy, aye. Mr. Young, aye. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Rish, aye. Mr. Peters, no. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mrs. Murray, no. Mr. Warnock, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Mullen, aye. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Mr. Husted, aye. Ms. Ernst, aye. Ms. Hassan, aye. Mr. Schumer, no. Mr. Crapo, aye.
Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane, aye. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schiff, aye. Mrs. Moody. Mrs. Moody, aye. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Cotton, aye. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Mr. Daines. Mr. Daines, aye.
Motion is agreed to.
On this vote, the yeas are 62, the nays are 34, and the motion is agreed to. Clerk.
Nomination, the Judiciary, Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama.
Mr. President.
The senator from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, while Republican leaders are continuing trying to ignore this healthcare crisis and insisting on shutting down the government rather than even considering talking to us about how we prevent these premiums from doubling across the country, I have been listening to folks back home who are painfully aware healthcare premiums are about to skyrocket and who are deeply concerned about what it is going to mean for their families and for their communities. So last week, when the Republican leaders sent us home, yet again, instead of working with us to end this shutdown and address the healthcare crisis, I made a visit to Seymour Community Health Center's Oak Harbor Clinic. Why? To hear from doctors and healthcare providers about what is just beyond the horizon if Republicans insist on inaction. I heard about how healthcare cuts Republicans passed are going to devastate our hospitals, devastate our clinics and health centers. And I heard about how these massive premium hikes that are being announced right now, the ones Republicans are trying very hard to ignore, are going to push millions of people off their healthcare plans. One person I spoke with serves on the board of an insurer on the Washington Health Benefit Exchange. He warned me that if we do not save these ACA tax credits, they are anticipating so many customers will be priced out that the number of individuals they cover through the marketplace will drop 35 to 50%. You know, there's already a loud chorus of people speaking out concerned about this in my state and across the country. I have spoken with small business owners who are going to see their premiums double, even triple, and some quadruple, and who are having to rethink whether they try to keep their small business doors open and maybe go without coverage, or alternatively, just pack it in and try to find a job with an employer-sponsored plan. I have spoken with retirees that are not yet old enough for Medicare, who've gotten notice that their monthly premiums are about to go through the roof. In some cases, we are talking about thousands of dollars a month. And here's the thing, not only do I know there are more stories like this across the country, I also know there are going to be many more stories pouring in very shortly. Because the reality is there are rate hikes in the mail right now, going out to people who had no idea about the Republican healthcare crisis and that it was going to hit them in the end. Rates are being set now. People are window shopping in many states and panicking from the sticker shock. In Idaho, open enrollment is now underway. It has started. That means right now, families are seeing the cold, hard numbers and the sharp increase it will cost them to stay covered. And in 2 weeks, that same nightmare is coming to every state in the country. Who do Republicans think they are fooling when they try to just ignore this? What in the world are they talking about when they say deal with it later? These price hikes are about to get locked in. There is no later. We need to act now. There was an earlier, though. Perhaps we should talk about that for a minute, because Democrats have been calling for action on this for months. And where were Republicans? Why wouldn't Republicans sit down with us to talk about health care in September? Why wouldn't they talk about health care in August? Why couldn't they find a single minute to work with us on health care in July or June or even May? After all, they had plenty of time this summer to shovel tax breaks at billionaires and put over $1 trillion in health care funding on the chopping block. They spent months on billionaires, but they can't be bothered when it comes to health care. They can't be bothered to help our working families. They would rather shut down the government than sit down and talk about preventing these premiums from doubling. But Democrats are going to talk about health care, whether Republicans want to or not. House Republicans have been hiding from this issue for a month. I'm not kidding. They have literally been on vacation for nearly a month now. Hiding from this problem will not make it go away. Those rate hikes are in the mail. They are going out to our constituents. Window shopping is going live. Folks can now go online in many states and see the exact cost of Republican inaction. And open enrollment is still marching ahead. It is underway now in Idaho, and in a few weeks, it's going to be across the nation. If you are a Republican who thinks that somehow families will not notice their premium doubling, somehow they won't mind that their healthcare costs jump a couple $100 a month, or in some cases, by the way, a couple $1,000 a month, here's some advice. Stop taking your marching orders from billionaires like President Trump and start listening to those people back home. Talk to the farmers. Actually, a quarter of them are covered on these exchanges. Talk to small business owners like I have. Talk to employees, many of whom are covered through this exchange, because they are the ones who will feel the pain from this, and they know it. And they are begging Congress to act. And you know what? 3/4 of the people who rely on the ACA tax credits live in red states. And the 10 states where folks who lose these tax credits will see the largest premium increases, they're all red states. So shutdown or not, Republicans can only ignore this issue if they ignore their own constituents. So to our Republican leaders, don't hide from your constituents. Don't hide from this healthcare crisis you're causing. Quit hiding from the negotiating table. The clock is not just ticking, the alarm is going off. We need to act now before these premium hikes become unavoidable. Democrats are at the table. We always have been at the table. We're ready to work out a deal that reopens the government and addresses the healthcare crisis. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Iowa is recognized.
Mr. President, it's day 16 of the Schumer shutdown. During this time, President Trump has been working to guarantee that our troops get paid, ensure women and children continue receiving food assistance, and end the conflict in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the Democrats continue holding the government hostage. As a result, air traffic controller shortages are causing flight delays, and some rural airports in Iowa may soon be forced to suspend operations. Seniors have lost access to some health services. The FDA is unable to process new drug and medical device applications, delaying the availability of new medical products. And Senator Schumer is taking pride in his shutdown, claiming, quote, "Every day gets better for us," end quote. Who is this us that it's getting better for? Because I know my folks back home really don't appreciate that attitude. Only a Washington politician would delight in causing such dysfunction. And while Congress will be paid for failing to do its job, many essential government employees who have continued to work through this shutdown will likely miss their next paycheck. The president is ensuring our troops get paid this week, a move that is being protested by some Democrats. Now, my daughter serves on active duty. She is a young Army officer. She had to sit down and counsel her troops last week on where they could go to get loans so they could make their obligated payments. So thank you, President Trump, for taking care of my daughter and her soldiers. Meanwhile, 750,000 non-essential government employees who haven't worked at all in these past weeks will be paid for doing nothing. It costs $400 million every workday to provide back pay to those that are furloughed during Schumer's shutdown. As of today, the price tag to pay non-essential bureaucrats not to work is $4.8 billion. $4.8 billion. Taxpayers should all be asking, why is Washington spending money on anyone or anything that is non-essential? President Trump is permanently eliminating many of these non-essential positions as part of a reduction in force or RIF. So here are some of my suggestions for getting rid of the riffraff with a RIF. First up, eliminate the positions of federal employees and contractors who weren't even working before the government shutdown. While millions of Americans have 2 or more jobs to make ends meet, these federal employees aren't working at all. There are dozens of national laboratory employees with nothing to do who spend the workday catnapping or playing cards and games. To pass time, one of them started journaling. One of his entries reads, quote, "Did nothing all day today, over 10 hours in here." The following day, he wrote, quote, "I do hope to play another good game of chess." They're not the only ones with nothing to do. A Department of Energy contractor actually filed a complaint that he was getting paid for work he wasn't doing. So good on him, at least he's honest. For years, he and his coworkers have been spending their time looking for things to do, watching Netflix and taking naps. He says he is, quote, "begging for work," adding, "I can't believe I'm getting paid to do nothing." If federal employees can't even justify their own salary, how can anyone else? I've also uncovered bureaucrats who are holding several different government jobs simultaneously, but aren't doing any of them. For example, a full-time HUD employee was being paid for 2 other full-time, got this, folks? Okay, she was being paid for 2 other full-time government contractor jobs. So that's 3 full-time jobs in total. She frequently billed taxpayers for working more than 24 hours in a single day. Gosh, if I could find more than 24 hours in a day, that would be pretty extraordinary. But this woman was paid $225,000 for hours she never worked in nearly 3 years. 3 full-time jobs, people, not working any of them. This isn't an isolated case either. I've introduced my Double Dippers Act to cross-check paychecks and payrolls to identify and stop bureaucrats from double billing taxpayers for work they're not even doing. Okay, don't laugh. This is true here. There are plenty of other non-essential jobs that can be eliminated immediately, beginning with the multitude of gimmicky government mascots. I'm not talking about Smokey the Bear, okay? Not talking about Smokey the Bear, but rather the other costume characters you've probably never even heard of, like the National Park Service's Lupe the Ringtail, who is so frightening that Lupe makes children cry. Owlie Skywarn. Oh, I'm sure you've all heard of Owlie Skywarn with the National Weather Service. Another Park Service mascot, Riley the Roadrunner. Puddles the Blue Goose with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And everybody's favorite, Franklin the Fair Market Fox from HUD. I say let's furlough these fur balls forever. Tax dollars should never be spent paying for any of these do-nothing jobs, especially when there are severe staffing shortages for critical jobs like air traffic controllers and VA health care providers. The folks who are working these important jobs are too often overworked, understaffed, and underappreciated. So these folks can go. I commend all of those essential workers who are doing the jobs that we need done on a daily basis. They continue to answer the call of duty during the Schumer shutdown without knowing when they may receive their next paycheck. Thank you for putting your country first, and on behalf of my fellow Iowans, I also would like to extend from them a very hearty thank you. And to those who have been collecting paychecks without even working, even before this shutdown began, all I can really say is thanks for nothing. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Delaware is recognized.
Mr. President, are we in a quorum call?
We're not.
Mr. President, I rise today to address the moment that we are in here in the United States Senate. We are about to proceed to a vote on a motion that the majority leader has laid on the floor. And I am the senior Democrat on the subcommittee of appropriations that writes the bill that funds our national defense. I've worked well and closely with Senator McConnell in this undertaking this year. And I'm about to vote no on proceeding to take up the House defense bill, which may surprise some of my colleagues from both parties or my constituents or folks wondering what the heck is going on here. So I wanted to take a few minutes and speak to this moment, my vote, and hopefully our path forward. Americans care deeply about security, about the security that comes from knowing that you and your family won't suddenly be bankrupted by unexpected health care costs, the loss of health insurance, and the security that comes from knowing that millions of highly skilled, trained, and dedicated American men and women are on the line around the world, shoulder to shoulder with our allies, defending America's security and that of the world. And we need a path towards addressing both. The federal government is currently shut down because we can't come to an agreement here in the Senate with the president, with the House, to deal with the expiring Affordable Care Act tax credits that make it affordable. Letters are about to go out in my home state of Delaware that'll tell folks who get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, their rates are going to go up dramatically, in many cases more than 100% because of expiring tax credits. What's that got to do with national defense? Bluntly, the process here in this Senate, the process with our president, the process of spending or not spending appropriated funds has destroyed a lot of the trust that is essential for the Senate as a body to work, for the Congress to legislate, for our federal government to reopen. In the last Congress, I was the chair of the subcommittee that wrote the appropriations bill. Roughly $32 billion went to USAID, an agency that no longer exists. Some of you may remember DOGE, an Elon Musk-led effort to get into and tear up, and in the case of USAID, tear apart our long-standing, decades-old U.S. foreign assistance program. It did a lot more damage than just that. But in many ways, the actions that began in January and picked up speed in the spring caused alarm and concern by many of us in the Senate that we have an OMB director and an administration willing to violate bipartisan agreements from the last Congress, commitments to spend money, contracts and agreements with partners and allies around the world and across many different areas. In fact, just yesterday, a federal district court judge in California ruled that the reductions in force, the layoffs, the RIFs announced by the administration during this current shutdown were illegal because they were targeted and partisan. So many things have happened this year, it's tough to keep track. But the combination of them has led to a reduction in trust between our two caucuses, trust that is essential to our having an understanding and agreement to move forward. Let me be clear about this year's appropriations process. It's positive. From when we started in March, April, to when we concluded on the committee in July and voted out 8 strong bipartisan bills, the Senate appropriations process for at least 8 of the bills, the biggest bills, was constructive, bipartisan. In fact, the bill that I worked on closely with Senator McConnell was voted out of the committee by 26-3. So too were other key bills that deal with housing, that deal with education, that deal with healthcare. They came out of the committee 26-3 and are ready for action on the floor of the Senate, yet we're not proceeding to them today. There's 4 bills remaining in committee unaddressed. The committee should focus on them, take them up, and work them through. There's 3 bills that have already passed the Senate and are all but done being conferenced with the House. What I have heard from my Republican colleagues is that Leader Thune is trying to move ahead with a process that would put the defense bill, the health and education bill, the housing and transportation bill, which we call labor HHS and THUD, very compelling names, I know. But he wants to put together a package of many of these bills. Well, if that's the intention, we needed communication between our leaders and our caucuses. We have had a positive and productive process in Senate appropriations this year. But the leader's motion to go to the House defense bill was not expected, was not discussed, was not clear to my caucus as to what happens next. So it is with some real regret that I will vote no today, but continue to talk with my colleagues about how do we move forward. I want to take a moment and just speak to the defense bill that we worked so hard on and that came out of the committee with such strong bipartisan support. It would provide a better quality of life to the men and women of the American military and their families. It would invest in total $852 billion in our national defense, expanding shipyards, expanding munition production, creating stockpiles of critical weapons that we know we need for the future, investing in cutting-edge technologies, and rejecting some of the Trump budget cuts to aid to Ukraine, to Taiwan, to our Baltic allies, making positive progress in key areas. Our work together on this bill has generally been a positive experience between senators and our staff. Our challenge was the department, was the secretary and his budgeteers, who often appeared at hearings and meetings without their homework done, without the details ready, without a budget ready to go. Some of you may have forgotten this, but a principal focus of the administration and the majority here during this same time was the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, and trying to put $160 billion onto the Defense Department, not through regular order, not through the usual budget processes, but through this one-time infusion of cash. Senator McConnell and I historically haven't agreed on much, but we certainly agreed on this in hearings and speeches. If we're trying to invest in the future of our armed forces, whether it's new planes, new ships, new systems, or new technology, doing it with one-year money is unwise and unsound. We need to get back to regular order. We need to get back to a reliable and predictable appropriation process. And in order to do that, we need bipartisan agreement that rejects severe cuts, that restores funding for programs like the NIH and CDC, which is done in the bipartisan Labor H bill, the cuts to WIC and rural housing, which is done in the Ag bill, and we need to move these bills forward. The way we move these bills forward is by linking arms and making it clear. We reject rescissions. We want to appropriate beyond just defense. We want a broader package, and to have clarity from our president, the House, and the Senate about how we address the imminent health security crisis that confronts millions of Americans and for today and tomorrow keeps our government shut down. Americans, Mr. President, care about security. We care about security for our families from healthcare costs, and we care about security for our nation from the threats that are greater than at any time in my adult life. Let's find a path towards working together to address them. Thank you. And with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Alaska is recognized.
Mr. President, I came in at the tail end of the comments from my colleague and my friend from Delaware, and he has underscored some points that I think are important to remind us here in the Senate, but also people who are watching as we are in day 16 of a government shutdown. There's no great secret as to how we get the government fully functioning again. It is going to come about through cooperation. It is going to come about through good faith efforts by good folks who are intentioned to address the matters in front of us. We deal with politics. This is a political world. But I can tell you that so many of the people that I'm talking to don't really care about the politics of our situation. They don't care if the Democrats are winning or the Republicans are winning. They feel like as Americans, they're the ones that are being caught in this backwash. They don't understand why their flight was delayed or canceled this morning. They don't understand why the individual that they're trying to get through to at an agency is not picking up the phone, or they get a message saying that that this office is going to be closed until the government is reopened. What they care about is that we figure it out, And that requires communication. It requires talking with one another. And that's why I appreciate much of what my colleague has shared to this. Because as we are positioning as two sides that are seemingly dug in on this 16th day of a shutdown, real people are wondering, is their government going to be there for them? Mr. President, I didn't come to the floor this afternoon with a focus necessarily on the shutdown. I came to speak about a situation in my state that has literally closed off, shut down, collapsed whole communities. We had a storm, actually a series of storms, hit the west coast of Alaska just over the weekend. In this smaller inset here, you've got the state of Alaska, but this square panel is where the extent of the damage is. But this was a 1,000-mile storm going from the north up in Kotzebue all the way down into the Bristol Bay region, with the bulk of the damage on these small native communities that are focused on the coasts and up going into the Kuskokwim River. But it has been a disaster of major proportions. As we speak, we have communities that are being evacuated. And we understand when we talk about evacuation what that might mean. But people in these villages, in the villages of Kipnuk and Kwigillingok, are being told that you are everyone from your village is being evacuated. And it doesn't mean that you go to a town that's a few miles down the road to get to safety. It means that you are airlifted 500 miles to Anchorage or possibly closer to Bethel. But before I detail some of that, I think it's important to recognize that what we had happening over the weekend, while this massive storm, a storm that was bringing winds in excess of 100 miles an hour, flood surges that were pummeling the coast with inundation levels like we have never seen before. We heard, saw, read the stories of people who were trapped in their homes at night when the home was literally lifted off of its foundation and carried away in the current with families inside. One detail of a father and 4 children who woke his children up to say, we all need to go into one corner of the house in case the house tips. But to hear the fear, really the terror of being trapped in your own home as it is moving out into the ocean current. The U.S. Coast Guard, the Alaska National Guard were on deck, as they always are, saving lives. The U.S. Coast Guard rescued and saved 34 people. The Alaska Air Guard saved 8. The Alaska Air National Guard saved 9. Unfortunately, we did have one individual who is confirmed dead and 2 others that are believed and feared deceased as well, with 1 yet unaccounted for. But sharing the pictures of the extent of the damage, it's amazing that more did not lose their lives. This is a picture of the village of Kipnuk with the inundation. Here's the airport here, the airstrip, and the community literally entirely beneath the water. In this, you can see a little more clearly how the floodwaters have come throughout the entire village. Again, you see boats that are upended, roofs that are ripped off of homes. The destruction is just violent. A home that is drifting in the river water. This is in Kipnuk. This is a picture also in Kipnuk. Kipnuk is a community. Most of these communities many of the communities are what we call boardwalk communities. Boardwalk communities because we don't have roads. So you move about on small 4-wheelers. That's how you get to where you need to get, whether it's to school or otherwise. But literally everything in the community upended. Power poles snapped in half. So you can imagine the condition. There is no power. There is no water. There is no safe place. These individuals have been initially rescued to the schools where they were kept safe. But now what we are in the midst of is this massive, massive evacuation project. More than 1,000 people, again from 11 communities, have now been displaced. You had a situation where in Kipnuk, this village, you have about 680 people that are evacuated into the small school. In Quigilangak, about 400 people took shelter at the local school for a couple days. And keep in mind, don't have running water, restroom facilities aren't functioning. So the efforts that we saw from our search and rescue efforts, from our Coast Guard, from the Guard, from those who have come to the aid now, everyone from the World Kitchen to Samaritan's Purse to Red Cross, those efforts have been considerable. And we're getting people to shelter and to safety now. This is a picture that was taken late yesterday evening. This is the inside of a C-130. And there's about 300 people from Kipnuk that have been put inside the C-130. They're all sitting on the floor there, and they're being evacuated to Anchorage, Alaska. Again, this is 400 miles away. The efforts in Anchorage are considerable to make sure that they're going to be in safety. But it is a mass shelter. It is basically it's in our sports arena at the Alaska Airlines Center, in an auxiliary gym. They're going to be able to put 350 to 500 people. We're putting a convention center facility together to house another 800. So this is all very, very temporary. But the reality is that for so many of these people, they will not have homes to go back to. About 120 of the homes in Kipnuk will not be, are not repairable. They're completely destroyed. About 40 possible to repair. But again, this is the 16th of October, and conditions in this part of the state of Alaska right now, we're moving into winter. We're moving into winter. And so the idea that you can do construction in the wintertime, it doesn't happen. The last fuel barge to this region until next spring, until probably late May or June, the last fuel barge has come and gone. That means the ability to move supplies in and out and do any kind of construction, that's not happening. So for so many of these are going to be people who will be without a home. But I'm reminded that they are not homeless. They are not homeless. They are evacuees. And all they want is the ability to be safe somewhere for the moment. But looking forward, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very, very challenging to address the issues that they face in their community with the threats that they have. The storm that they had, we get storms every year. But what we're seeing is an increasing frequency of lethal storms. Several years ago, we had Typhoon Merbok, again, coming across from Japan, that just pummeled the coast. Again, 1,000-mile storm. We're still recovering from Hurricane Merbok, or Typhoon Merbok. And then just last year, again, another series of disasters along this same coast. And then this weekend, Typhoon Halong, once again, coming across from Japan. So the reality is we're seeing more and more of these. And the reality is that these storms come in October, but it used to be that we would already have ice that was coming into these northern waters by then. And the ice was enough to slow things down, to cool the waters down. But when you don't have the ice in the water is warming. This was perhaps an unusual weather pattern that came, but combined with that warmer water, it just churns this typhoon up. And so our reality is we're seeing in real time the impacts when you have a warmer ocean and less ice, which leads you to how you deal with these issues and these matters of resilience. This is hard. This is extraordinarily hard right now. And our hearts are with those who have lost their loved ones, who have lost so much, who have lost their home, but who are so anxious about what this means going forward and how we can be there for them. So I've got a great deal of respect and thanks and admiration for all who are pulling together to provide for relief efforts and to be thinking more long-term about how we ensure that the people of Quig and the people of Kipnuk and the people of Nightmute and Napakiak and Stebbins and Tuksuk and all up and down the coast, that they are safe in their homes where they have lived for thousands of years. Right now, we have the largest gathering of Alaska Natives that are convening in Anchorage for their annual convention. And so much of the convention this year is going to be focused on the matter of resilience and support for our communities. So I share these observations with colleagues, not because Alaska's storm is more powerful or more lethal or more devastating than the storms you may have in your state, Mr. President. Tennessee has seen some awful, horrible flooding. We're seeing this now, but it's a reminder to us here in Congress of the role that we do play, because all of our communities don't have the ability to provide that protection for themselves. So how do we build out more resilient communities? And then further to that point, when the disaster happens, how can we be there to support them in ways that make it real and meaningful for them, particularly in cultures where traditions may just be different than what we know and understand here in Washington, D.C. I'm going to end with a couple comments that were made just the other day when the governor held a briefing, a press conference about the ongoing impacts of this disaster. And one comment was made by U.S. Coast Guard Captain Christopher Culpepper, who said, if you think about previous instances of major inundations, such as Hurricane Katrina, that will start to paint the picture for what you might imagine what has happened along Western Alaska. And then our Adjutant General, General Sachs, said that this may end up being the largest off-road system response for the National Guard in about 45 years. So our reality is hard right now, and it's challenging. But one thing that I know about the people, not only in this region, but the people in my state, is there is a level of resilience. There is a level of determination. They're connected to their place. They're connected to their lands. And we want to make sure that they are able to have that cultural connection, that identity to the place that they have called home for thousands of years. And my final point is those who were literally engaged in rescue efforts to ensure that people were taken out of homes that were floating in the ocean, those that were doing the overflights in miserable storms, those that are there on the ground now, they were all out there doing their job at a time when it was not certain that they were going to be paid. Now that tension point has been resolved because the president announced that our military would be paid through this next pay period. The Coast Guard as well, which is critically important. But I think our job, our responsibility is to make sure that they don't have to worry about that. When they're flying a rescue mission, they're not thinking about whether or not their spouse at home is concerned about whether they're buying groceries or paying the rent. So we've got work to do here. But to those back home in Alaska who are working so closely on the ground to care for those who are truly afraid right now, truly afraid about their future, know that we are all working with you, and our hearts are with you. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to talk about something that threatens nearly every American: cyber attacks. And I call on my colleagues to pass the Protecting Americans from Cyber Threats Act, a no-brainer step to defend our citizens from cyber threats. This is a very wonky law, but it has a very, very simple objective: to encourage companies, private sector companies, to report hacks to the government so that together we can prevent it from happening again. This bill extends protections defined back in 2015 that encouraged companies to report cyber attacks to the federal government. It minimizes the risks companies once faced in reporting these hacks, and in doing so, it makes us all safer. Extending these protections has never been more important. Today, cyber attacks are top of mind for Americans across the country and certainly across the political spectrum. 2 months ago, I traveled to Benton Harbor, Michigan, and Troy, Michigan, two communities to talk about national security threats and what is keeping Michiganders up at night. Nearly every single person, regardless of profession or party, had a story about cybercrime, identity theft, robocalls and scams robbing people of their life savings, hacks on hospitals for patient data, and shut down access to electronic records. As a former CIA officer and Pentagon official, I've responded to countless threats to American security, but never before have we seen American citizens so exposed to security threats here at home. In the age of cyber warfare, everyday Americans are quite literally on the front lines. And Americans know the stakes. That's why they're scared. One Michigander said to me, quote, "Warfare is still on the ground, still things like rockets, but it's also changed. Cyber warfare can be just as brutal." But more than scared, Michiganders are frustrated. They don't believe that their government is taking the threat of cybercrime seriously. And if we don't renew this law, we will prove them right. On October 1st, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015 expired last October 1st. That means that companies are no longer incentivized to report hacks to the federal government. When a company self-reports a cyber attack, there is no longer a law to prevent the Justice Department from using that admission against them. And companies once again are incentivized to hide hacks from the government, which makes us all less safe. Companies have to see the government as an ally, not as a threat, and our safety depends on it. Because unlike other threats like tanks and nukes and subs, the weapons used in cyber crimes are not created, owned, and controlled by a government. They are from the private sector. So we have to work together to prevent these attacks. This law has already been consequential. Department of Homeland Security used it to respond to China's relentless Salt Typhoon campaign, which targeted every single American's unencrypted phone calls and text messages. And as long as the law remains expired, America is less safe. As long as we refuse to renew it, we are moving backwards in keeping the country secure. So today, very simple, I'm calling on my colleagues to renew these protections for another 10 years. They're renewed for 10 years at a time, so we can restore our cybersecurity defenses and better protect our nation. There's no good reason not to renew it. Businesses support it. The Trump administration supports it. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle support it. I know there's a proposal out there to extend the law instead of 10 years for just 5 weeks in the House's version of the temporary funding bill. But it's such a pivotal time for something that's actually a bipartisan consensus idea. Half measures shouldn't do. We've known that this was going to expire for 10 years. Americans deserve to have us not kick the can down the road just for another 5 weeks. There's too much at stake, particularly given the losses among the American public. So some things are bigger than party politics, and national security should always be one of them. This law is essential to keeping the country safe, to keeping Americans safe. So I urge my colleagues to renew it. In legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 182 S.2983, that the Peters substitute amendment, which is at the desk, be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered, read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, I
Senator from
object.
Kentucky.
I object.
Objection, sir.
Mr. President.
The senator from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to speak for up to 5 minutes prior to the scheduled roll call vote.
Without objection.
Mr. President, further, I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to cloture on the motion to proceed to calendar number 136, HR 4016.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today the Senate has the opportunity to begin consideration of an appropriations bill that is vital to our national defense and to the well-being of the brave men and women who serve in our armed forces. The fiscal year 2026 Defense Appropriations Bill would provide U.S. military services with the funding needed to deter China and Russia, to support our service members and their families, and to strengthen the defense industrial base. The bill would remove the uncertainty that our American troops face about when they will be paid because of the needless and reckless government shutdown that Leader Schumer has directed. I would point out, Mr. President, that passing a continuing resolution, as we have tried to do 10 times now, would also remove the cloud of uncertainty hanging over military paychecks. Mr. President, in July, as the presiding officer is well aware, the Appropriations Committee advanced the Senate version of the Defense Appropriations Bill by an overwhelming bipartisan vote of 26-3. The Senate version addresses major funding gaps across the board. It would invest in shipbuilding, including providing a critical down payment toward an additional DDG 51, the workhorse of the U.S. surface fleet, along with investments in additional Columbia and Virginia-class submarines. It would expand critical munitions production, including air and missile defense interceptors, long-range missiles, and next-generation hypersonic weapons developed by our most innovative firms. It would fund drone and counter-drone technologies, which are increasingly changing the nature of the battlefield, as we have seen in both Ukraine and Israel. And it would sustain security cooperation with close allies and partners whose growing defense capabilities are force multipliers for the United States and contribute to the deterrence of shared adversaries. Finally, Mr. President, this bill would invest in our most precious asset, the courageous, dedicated, patriotic men and women of our armed forces. It shows our continuing commitment to their readiness, well-being, and mission success. Let me commend the leadership, the outstanding leadership of Subcommittee Chairman Mitch McConnell and Ranking Member Chris Coons for their hard work on this bill. I also want to thank Majority Leader John Thune for his commitment to bringing fiscal year 2026 appropriations bills to the Senate floor. This is such a welcome change compared to last year, when then Majority Leader Senator Schumer refused to bring a single one of the 12 annual appropriations bills to the Senate floor for consideration. Mr. President, I want to know for my colleagues that the Senate version of the defense bill was put together with input from 94 of our Senate colleagues who submitted more than 5,800 requests to the committee for our careful consideration. For all of these reasons, Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to allow us to proceed to the consideration of the fiscal year 2026 defense funding bill. We want this to be an open process with an opportunity to add additional bipartisan bills that address vital domestic priorities, including biomedical and scientific research and infrastructure. And we want members to have a voice in the funding decisions that affect all of our states and constituents back home. That is the approach that we took in committee. That is the approach that we want to take on the Senate floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 136, H.R. 4016, an act making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 4016, an act making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2026, and for other purposes, shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rules. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt-Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Lankford. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Murky. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Marino. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Risch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer.
Right on time.
Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Blackburn, Britt, Capito, Collins, Cotton, Kramer, Crapo, Curtis, Daines, Ernst, Fetterman, Fisher, Grassley, Haggerty, Hoven, Husted, Heidsmith, Langford, Lummis, Marshall, McCormick, Moody, Marino, Mullen, Murkowski, Paul, Ricketts, Risch, Rounds, Schmidt, Scott of South Carolina, Shaheen, Sheehy, and Young. Senators voting in the negative: Cantwell, Gallego, Hassan, Heinrich, Hirono, King, Lujan, Markey, Murray, Peters, Reed, Schatz, Slotkin, Warner, Welch, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Kane, no. Mr. Durbin, no. Mr. Wicker, aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Scott, Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mr. Kim, no. Mr. Banks, aye. Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Kennedy, aye. Mr. Coons, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Alsobrooks, no. Ms. Blunt Rochester. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, no. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Ms. Baldwin. Ms. Baldwin, no. Ms. Warren. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, aye. Ms. Moran. Mr. Moran, aye. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. Thune. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Schumer, no. Ms. Rosen. Ms. Rosen, no. Mr. Booker. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Padilla, no. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz, aye. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Justice. Mr. Justice, aye. Mr. Warnock. Mr. Warnock, no. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schiff, no.